Okay, so welcome to the Bluenoise series on recording, on mixing, mastering, on the whole trip. You know, starting a musical job from the beginning and breaking it down for you guys to really understand what it is that we do and maybe can help what you do. So we're going to really break it down, starting right at the top. I'm going to ask Bob, what are the different things that you can do to be prepared to help the vocalist so that she walks into the studio? What are we going to do to make her feel comfortable? Where are we going to start?
Okay, the best thing you can do for an artist is to be prepared before the artist arrives. So that would include things like music stands. Have those ready to go. Have different microphone options ready to go. I know a lot of people don't have 3 or 4 or 5 different microphones to choose from, but have what you have available, have it ready for the artist. And any additional effects such as reverbs, etc., have that ready to go. Have a headphone mix set up ready so that the artist can literally walk in the studio, put on the headphones, and they're good to go. It really does help with the nerves and the tension. The studio can be a very stressful place, so what you want to do is keep the tension and the nerves down to minimum.
Right, and I think also you want to create value. They want to walk out here thinking that they got value, and I think there's nothing worse when you walk into a studio and absolutely nothing is prepared, you know, and the engineer and producer is almost surprised to see you.
It's also money, like time is money, you know. No one wants to spend half an hour of their 1 hour session waiting for the sound engineer to set up a microphone.
Absolutely. Okay, so preparation, simple things like having water available, having, like Bob said, a music stand available, good lighting, just the basic peripherals are sometimes overlooked. So if you are going to get somebody in, I mean, I've had sessions when I started where I only had one mic, so you just got to learn to make that mic sound good and have it ready. And I think that's the whole thing we're talking about. Make sure your gear's working, so you've tested it. Make sure the cable's working. Nothing more embarrassing than when the vocalist gets you eventually, and now you've plugged everything in, and then your cable doesn't work. So these things need to be tested and just made 100% sure that when she gets you, she's not going to be dealing with your equipment glitches. So important to test the session, make sure it's all ready to go. Be prepared. If you've got a scratch track that has been sent previously, make sure it's marked out, etc., etc. Make sure the studio is well aired. You know, it doesn't smell like a wet dog.
Bunch of dudes.
A bunch of dudes. Yeah. Make sure it doesn't smell like a bunch of dudes. And then I think the other thing is to be light-hearted and encouraging, and it's important, you know, to offer constructive feedback. So if you feel something isn't perhaps working, to be able to communicate this. So I think your communication skills need to be open, where it needs to be encouraging, but at the same time be constructive. And how do you deal with that? If you need to say to somebody, you know, take a deep breath, relax. If you see that they are stressed out, how do you normally cope with that? What do you do?
I think the best thing to do is just to be encouraging. You know, it's very obvious where the mistakes are. You don't have to tell a vocalist, "Oh, you sang flat on that note." You know, when they hear it back, they'll understand. I think a very important thing though is the flow of communication, keeping that communication open at all times. You know, there's nothing worse for a vocalist than being stuck in the booth in dead silence. You can see the producer and the engineer are talking in the background, but you can't hear anything, and you just stand there. Hello, you know, it's not very productive. It's not very constructive. The best thing you can do is when you're done with the vocal take, open that communication line. You know, whether it's a talkback mic on your console or whether it's a case of turning around to the vocalist who's been standing behind you in the same room and going, "How was that? What did you think?" You know. And also to explain to the artist what you're doing. You know, if you're sitting there just quickly comping the vocal, it was a great take, but you just start editing straight away. If they don't understand what you're doing, you're just clicking. As far as they can tell, you know, looking at you through the glass, you're just clicking with the mouse in the background, and they don't know what's going on. You know, you could just say to them, "Hey, that was a great take. Give me 2 seconds. I just need to do a quick edit." That's great. You know, it keeps them in the room, keeps them in the process.
So just the communication, right?
Yeah,
just making sure that they know exactly where you're at. I have seen a lot of engineers and producers do this, where they'll perhaps, you know, where the vocalist does a take and they roll their eyes, or there's a body language thing. And I think also maybe to take note or to make note that it's important that that your job as an engineer or producer is not just to push buttons and make a song, but it's also to make a person feel comfortable. And I think it's it's almost like there's a synergy thing happening in a studio when there's vocals happening. You know what I mean? The person has to feel like they're in a good space. So I think also just being aware of body language and the language that is used to speak to the vocalist. You know, whether it be whatever, a gear malfunction, or if you feel they didn't get the take right. You know, instead of rolling your eyes, perhaps communicate, you know, once again saying, guys, you know, we're not quite there, maybe we should look at changing this note or whatever, you know, just starting to give other options.
Yeah, definitely. One other big thing is keeping your cool, you know, keeping your cool in studio, because the studio can be a very stressful place.
Yeah.
And a lot of time, you know, once the artist starts getting stressed, the producer starts getting stressed, if you're the engineer, the best thing you can do is just keep calm, even if you've got serious problems and things are not working well. Maybe the DAW software is giving you trouble. Maybe your computer's giving you trouble. You know, don't make that the artist's problem. You know, it's a technical thing. Deal with it. Keep calm. Keep the session going. A lot of people would prefer to work with someone who's just level-headed and easy-going than someone who might be the best engineer but they're completely highly strung and it ruins the session.
Yeah. What can you say about talking through lyrics and stuff like that, so the vocalist understands the emotion? Obviously, there's two ways to look at this. They've written the song, so they understand the emotion, or they're a session vocalist.
Yeah.
Generally, session vocalists would have had some sort of experience. So perhaps you got a vocalist, it's their first time that they're doing this. Do you discuss the emotion with them, or do you leave that all up to themselves? I suppose I am answering the question. Becomes the producer's job as well as the engineer. You know, it becomes more of a partnership, a synergistic relationship, I suppose, than just letting the vocalist just carry on singing. I don't know if you're going to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think sometimes if someone walks straight into the session and they're feeling nervous, you know, they're feeling a little bit, maybe they wrote the song, but they don't necessarily memorized it. Maybe they haven't, you know, gigged the song or toured the song before and it's a new thing. And, you know, sometimes it helps just to walk through them with the lyrics beforehand, you know, and just remind them of the emotion you're trying to capture with the song, you know, what are the lyrics trying to say, like that kind of stuff's important. And also it just helps them think not about the microphones and the studio space, and it actually helps them think back to what's the song about, what am I trying to, what emotion am I trying to convey? You know?
I think that's important. Yeah, that is cool. I think as a vocalist, under pressure, you could forget those things, you know, and next thing you know, you're just stressing and trying to get through the song. And I've seen vocalists who are experienced and they still battle with that. You know, they get into a studio and they get into the studio space in their head and they don't get into the song and the emotion of the song in the studio. It all becomes technical. And I think within a studio space, there's a large creative job for the producer and the engineer, communicating these things with the vocalist, so to make sure you get the right performance, etc., etc. Make sure they're comfortable, and hopefully when they walk out here, they go, that was amazing, they had an awesome time, and you got a great performance. And that's what you want to aim for. I've been in situations where we've been in a session, and I've lost my cool, you know, and I know it definitely put a dampen on the session. And for some people, I think the lesson I learned that day is a lot of these people come in for the first time, and these songs are special to them, and you know, even if the person isn't that great, you know, I think you've got to remember that we're offering a service, and we've got to allow them to experience that at the level that at a top level. You know, you can't look at a vocalist and go, well, they can't sing, and you know, so therefore I'm going to give them 50% of my attention. So I think it's very important that we give them full attention and really try and get the best out of them as an engineer, as a producer, to make sure we elevate whatever they are trying to achieve.
Yeah. One big thing to remember when you're recording vocals in studio is that patience is key. You know, good vocal takes don't always happen in the first take. They don't always happen, you know,
10th take.
On the 10th take, yeah. You know, these things take time. Yeah. You need to sit with the artist. They need to feel comfortable. They need to be able to deliver their best performance. And you need to be patient with this kind of stuff. Sometimes you need to sit in the session for an extra hour, you know, or half an hour or whatever it is, just to get that perfect vocal take. It's always a bit of a balancing act in a professional studio when you've got a lot of bookings. Maybe you're very busy that day, but you really need to take time to sit with the vocalist. Don't just take whatever you've got and say, we'll fix it later in the mix.
We'll fix it in the mix.
We'll fix it in the mix. You won't fix it in the mix.
Yeah. Just the source, absolutely. Everything's gonna, or your mix is gonna come down to a source, and even your tuning, your vocal tuning. There's some stuff. I suppose you can tune everything, but you don't want to be able to hear the tuning. So, like Bob says, I think the source is definitely gonna make a difference in the end product. That whole thing about being patient, and like I said, I've learned. I haven't always been patient, but I think I started understanding that I want to add value to what people are doing, and I think that's the difference. Is that with music and with what we do as musicians, as engineers, as producers, we want to add value. We got into it because we loved it. I don't think anybody got into this job for the money. So, but so we need to take every session on like it was our first session. We need to treat it like that and really elevate what we are doing and what we are trying to achieve. So, yeah, just having that great experience, the great experience of coming into a studio and walking out and just feeling refreshed and feeling like that was amazing.
Yeah, confidence is a big thing, especially on recording.
Yeah.
You can hear a confident vocal take on a recording.
Yeah.
And it's our job and it's your job and it's the recording engineer's job is to be able to capture that confidence and capture that confident performance that speaks to the song.
How do you deal with, let's say we got a vocalist and we know they're not great, right? And I mean, I say that with a lot of respect. I've recorded okay vocalists that have got songs on radio, etc. So, in my opinion, you work them harder to get that one take that will work.
Yeah, definitely.
But what is your take on working with a vocalist that is perhaps not cracking it?
I think the biggest thing is just to keep reminding them of what emotion they're trying to bring across in the song. Some vocalists, they have an emotive character to their voice. That's why people like them. Most artists, if people don't like the sound of their voice, probably don't stay artists for very long.
Yeah.
So there's something there, and the trick is to find the magic factor, whatever it is in their voice that is appealing to people and it sounds good, and try and work that angle. I would say, someone might have a really cool character to their voice, but their pitch might not necessarily be that great. So
yeah.
I think in that case, you try and bring out that emotive character, but you got to be very mindful of the pitch thing as well. Maybe you just need to say to them like, "Hey, that was a great take. Have a listen to this. Yeah, you can hear you sound a little bit flat on that." People don't. When you're criticizing an artist, you need to have constructive criticism. So you need to say to them, "Hey, let's listen to this together. We're working together. It's not like me versus you type of thing." Especially if you're a producer and you're, a musician, it's difficult to see past these things. But sometimes you need to work with them, work together and say, "Hey, okay, let's listen to it together. You can hear you're a little bit late. The timing wasn't great in this. Maybe the pitch wasn't so great." I think that kind of approach works well, as opposed to going, "Oh, that was a nice take, but you're a bit flat on the last note." And then they need to hear it. They need to go through that process. I think that's why it takes a bit longer.
So I think what you're saying as well is going from to take into a professional mindset. Where it's not. I don't say hobbyists, because there's some hobbyists that are very professional. But just being professional at all times. And I think one thing just to make mention of is maybe get the vocalist to be at the studio half an hour earlier, so that they don't rush in and rush into the session as well. Maybe there's time for hello, how are you, what's your name, so it's not just straight in and you don't know who this person is. Maybe even do research. If it is a professional vocalist, find out a bit about them. Find out who they are, find out what they've done. I think there's a lot to be said for that too. To just create that space, like, okay, you know what, I actually know a bit about you now, and it will definitely help the session. Definitely help talking to them, making them feel at ease when you feel you know the person a bit better. Even if it's social media, you've checked them out, what kind of sound they're into, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, that's one thing that's important when we talk about headphone mixes, and I think we're going to talk about headphones in a later video, but it's really important when you are setting up a headphone mix try and get it as good as you can for the specific style of music. If don't drown something in reverb if it's going to be like a really snappy kind of like pop tune. It's going to put the vocalist off. Like you need to just be aware of those kind of things. So I think it definitely helps to check out the music that they've done before, check out other styles of music they might be into. That kind of thing really goes a long way to help.
Cool. So guys, in episodes to come, we are going to break it down. We're really going to go step by step from compression to EQ to how we record the vocal chain, the mics we use, the outboard gear we use, and then we're even going to go through the whole mixing process and just go step by step. It'll be short videos, easy to digest. So stick with us, and we'll make you famous. Okay, no, I'm just kidding.
Hopefully you learned something.
Hopefully you learned something. Yeah, so we're really looking forward to doing this road. And I think what's cool about this is Bob is a studied sound engineer. He studied at
SAE.
SAE in London town. And so he's got a technical background, and as well as a musical background. He studied music. He plays violin violently. He plays guitar. He plays bass. What else do you play?
Things with strings.
My background is as a producer, as a composer, as a guitarist, and I've kind of taught myself how to do the engineering part. So it's always interesting when we get together and work on stuff, how the differences are, from somebody that's actually studied it to somebody that's kind of learnt it on the job. And I think both ways work, and it's so interesting how I've learned so much from Bob, and I'm sure vice versa. I hope vice versa. Yeah. Just purely from two different ways of approaching music recording, music production, etc. Yeah, hopefully we'll teach you guys something, and you'll find value in what we're going to be doing here. We're not going to hide anything. We're just going to get to it, and yeah, man. And maybe have a mix. Maybe have a recording that you can work with as we go through these next couple of weeks or months with this video series on recording vocals. So chat to you guys soon. See you next week, Bob. Thanks for
watching. Yeah.
Awesome. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.